Okay, we are right after the parentheses on Vav Amud Aleph. Tanya Idach, another Braita teaches, Yoreh b'Mar Heshvan. A person, the first rains come in Mar Heshvan, u'malkosh b'Nisan, and the last rains end in Nisan. Divrei Rabbi Meir, that's what he holds. V'chachamim omrim, Yoreh b'Kislev. When is the earliest rain? Not in Cheshvan, but rather 1 month later in the month of Kislev. Man Chachamim, the Gemara asks, who are these Chachamim following? Which opinion is the opinion of the Chachamim? Amar Rav Hizda explained, Rabbi Yossi. That opinion of the Chachamim is actually sourced in the opinion of Rabbi Yossi. The Tanya, that Rabbi Yossi taught, and we learned in the Braita, Ezuhi Reviyah Rishona, the first of the three rains, Habichira Bishlosha b'Mar Cheshvan. The first rain is on the 3rd of Cheshvan. Benonit, the second one, is on Shiv'ah, on the 7th day. Afela, and the third one is on the 17th. So 3, 7, and 17. Okay? Now, just look at the discrepancy, because that's going to be relevant in a little bit. 3, 7 is 4 days. 7, 17 is 10 days. So it's not equal. 3, 7, and 17. That's the first opinion in the Braita. Who says, whose opinion is that? The Gemara says, Rabbi Meir. That's the opinion of Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Yehuda says, the first rain of the season, which is divided into 3 rains, the first one is B'Shiv'ah, on the 7th. The second, B'Yud Zayin, the 17th. The third, on the 23rd. So 7 to 17 is 10. 17 to 23 is 6. So again, not equidistant. Rabbi Yossi learns, B'Yud Zayin, 17. It's interesting, you see how it's stacked. It goes 3, 7, 17, 7, 17, 23, 17, right, 23. So Rabbi Yossi, 17, Yud Zayin, 23, Ubrosh Chodesh Kislev. Now it's interesting because if you count 17 to 23, you get 6. But when you count Ad Ve'ad Bechlal, including the day, you get 7. So it's 7, 7, and 7. Okay? So 17 to 23 is 7. 23 till 29 is 7. But it's roughly 777. We'll see in just a minute what that means. So the last day, Rosh Chodesh Kislev, the first day of Kislev, is the last of the first rain. Whose opinion is that? This last opinion, Rabbi Yossi Omer, okay? And according to this opinion, Rabbi Yossi Omer, these, the special ones, the singles, the individuals, the righteous ones, mit'anim, they do not begin to fast ad sheyagia Rosh Chodesh Kislev. Now, he holds that the final of the first rains, when does it fall out on? On Rosh Chodesh Kislev. So if you went through all of the times that the rain should fall, that first rain, which is so important to the beginning of the crops, if you miss all of those dates, what happens? We got to get out the prayer books. Get out the rabbis. Everyone come out. I used to love this idea. You know, they say this, the rabbi, there was no rain in a certain community. And he tells everyone, we're going to get everyone from all the synagogues to pray together. No one's going to pray in their own shul. We're going to get everyone from all the shuls to pray in the town square, and it's going to rain. Anyway, everyone comes out to the town square. The rabbi looks out and he says, it's not going to work. And he comes down off of the podium and he starts walking home. They say, Rabbi, we gathered everybody here. How come, what are you walking home? He says, I told you you're all going to come pray, and then the rain's going to come. Look, nobody bought an umbrella. That means nobody believes. Nobody believes it's going to rain. Now, that story is one of those stories that's just a gem. And it resonates on so many different levels, okay? But the point is, if you miss these 3 cutoff dates, the first rain, the second rain, the third rain, the first 3 parts of the first rain, at that stage, people started to fast. They would pray, but at what point? Once the whole first rain cycle, which is these 3 dates, have already passed. So Rabbi Yossi would hold that those people would fast when? When is his 3rd date? Rosh Chodesh Kislev. The other opinions, when would they hold that people would fast? They would say that people would fast on the 3rd date that was applicable. You want to answer the door? The 3rd date that was applicable to them. So according to Rabbi Meir, it was 3, 7, and 17. So he would have people fast on the 17th. The second opinion, Rabbi Yehuda, was 7, 17, 23. He would have people fast on the 23rd date. And finally, the last opinion, Rabbi Yossi, what does he hold? He holds that the person would fast, ahlan usahlan, welcome aboard. Right? At that stage, yeah, we got over here, the person would fast because all 3 dates had gone by and nothing had materialized yet. Okay? That's a fresh yarmulke from a bar mitzvah this week. Has not been worn in this house. Okay? Yeah, maybe yes, okay. So that's the opinion of Rabbi Yossi. Okay? Amara Chisda, Rav Chisda says, halacha ki Rabbi Yossi. Rav Chisda related that the halacha was according to Rabbi Yossi. Now the Gemara says, hold up. I know that you just quoted Rabbi Yossi, Rav Chisda saying that the halacha follows him. And this is one of those examples where we find that the rabbis were using the final opinion, the person who had seen all the opinions, and he was deciding. What do we call that? Lezel, batar, batra, which means go after the final one. The final rabbi, even though he was maybe smaller in stature than those that preceded him, but he'd seen all the opinions. He's tabulated everybody. He knows all the arguments for, all the arguments against. That final guy, he gets the final word. So Rav Chisda is now opining on a machloket between 3 rabbis that are all bigger than him. So why is his opinion important? Because he's the final one. So Rav Chisda was going to tell us that the halacha is according to Rav Yossi. Amemar, but there's another rabbi, his name is Amemar. Matni lahad Rav Chisda, he quoted this Rav Chisda that you just mentioned, not pertaining to the halacha of Rav Yossi, which says that we stop fasting, we're worried about the rains after the 3rd date, which is according to Rabbi Yossi, is the Rosh Chodesh Kislev date, but rather B'hai Lishna, in the following manner, is how he quoted this Rav Chisda adjudicating this a halachic matter. Bishlosha b'Mar Cheshvan, on the 3rd day of Mar Cheshvan, Sho'alin et Geshamim, is when we begin to say, we begin to ask for the rain. Which opinion is this 3rd of Cheshvan? Rabbi Meir, because he's the first one that says that the 3rd day of Cheshvan is the day of the first rain. So on that day, you're asking for the rain. Yes.
Why are there 3 rains?
There are 3 different rains. There's when the first rains begin, it rains in a certain pattern. Now, certain agricultural or geographical climates are different than others, but the more arid climates have a much more clockwork-like rainy season. In America, it rains whenever. It rains in the summer, it rains in the winter. Sometimes it rains more in the summer than it rains in the winter. Like some of those strong summer rains, forget about it. That doesn't happen in a Middle Eastern country. You do not get rain for 6 months straight, okay? And all this idea, by the way, and there are some opinions that say this. Remember we started in the Masechet that when it rains on Sukkot, it's considered to be like a curse. Siman Klala. Chacham Ovadia brings halacha, he says, it's not a siman klala when it rains in America on Sukkot. Why? He says that was referring to a abnormal rain, illustrating some sort of displeasure from on high, because it never would normally rain now. In America, when it rains haphazardly, whenever. So these 3 rains, it wasn't necessarily symbolic or spiritual, but rather this is how it actually worked. There was a rain that happened usually on this day, and usually followed roughly 1 week later by a second rain, and followed roughly 1 week later by a 3rd rain. That was the pattern that the farmers had noticed was happening in the beginning of the season. So we have 3 opinions as to when exactly that takes place. So when Rabbi Yossi is now saying, when Rav Chisda, is saying that you ask on the 3rd day of Geshamim, Rabban Gamliel, or Rabbi Gamliel says Shiv'abo. Who's Rabban Gamliel following? Shiv'abo. The second opinion, which says that the first date is Rabbi Yehuda, who was probably his father, okay? Because Rabbi Yehuda gave birth to Rabbi Gamliel, right? They had a cycle of names. There was Rabbi Yehuda, there was Rabbi Gamliel, Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, Rabbi Gamliel ben Rabbi Shimon. They were already the first Syrians, okay? Amar Rav Chisda. Rav Chisda says, Halacha ki Rabban Gamliel. So Rav Chisda, in that case, ruled, according to the opinion of Rabban Gamliel, that we start asking for rain on the 7th day of Cheshvan, okay? Now, by the way, that is the date that they start asking for rain in Israel. So they've already been saying Barech Aleinu for quite some time. It's only here that we wait for this date, this English date defined by the solar calendar. That's how we wait for. It's strange. You look in the Siddur, it's like December 5th. What the heck is that?
Yeah. February is 29.
When February is, what is that? Why?
By 4.
Because right, on a Tuesday when your mother was a goat, right? All these things.
The rule, if it's divisible by 4, I think it's the 4th. If it's not, it's the 5th, or one or the other.
Now, but why is that relevant? The point is because it's being run by the solar calendar, actually based on the equinox, from what I understand. Not the gym, but Okay, fine. Now the point is, at that's.
And in Peloton they do it.
In Peloton, they do it. You guys missed it. Shul, I had it. Every once in a while, I come up with a decent line in Shul, and some guy for this, I think it was Joe God actually. He dedicated. He said the breakfast in memory of, and the breakfast during the week, and the breakfast on the kiddush, and the seudah shalishit in the synagogue, and a thing like that. And he finishes, and I said, and the Peloton to work them all off. And Baruch Hashem. So I hope Haron didn't put that down. That was one I added by myself. Okay, so. The only one that in Chutz La'aretz, that's how we're following. We're following that system because the seasons are not actually bound by the lunar calendar because the lunar calendar is always losing days.
December 5th in Europe too, or it's only for America?
I believe it's anywhere but Eretz Israel. Okay? And by the way, you should just know, interesting halakha. Again, we'll come back to this when we get to it in the Masechet. Chama says there are certain countries. But they don't want rain. They're at flood risk every time it rains. You remember when the ground was saturated? Every time it would rain, we'd have flooding in the streets. Halacha says in cases like that, they can actually suspend Barech Aleinu. Remember, if you really believe in it and you brought your umbrella to the fast day, right? What are you doing? You're asking for rain. You don't want no more rain. Okay? So there's actually countries that are prone to flooding who don't say Barech Aleinu at all. And that's halach. That's a halachic basis to that. In Argentina, I remember that they abolished, I think it was for an entire year, they abolished saying Barech Aleinu because they were having, people were being swept away and being killed, so they take it seriously. All right. So the Gemara continues. Halakha ki Rabban Gamliel. The halakha is according to Rabban Gamliel. And what does Rabban Gamliel say? 6a-bo, and that's how we follow in the land of Israel. Okay? Kiman. By the way, you should just know. I was praying in the synagogue in Safra. I prayed Shacharit the next day. So after we were learning about this halakha, about the days, and I went up and I prayed Shacharit and I said Barech Aleinu, and everyone's like, "What are you doing, Barech Aleinu?" They're all yelling at me and I'm a month early. Who makes that mistake? Because you're 6 months behind. How did you not, Rabbi? How did you not know? The answer is I was learning Taanit that night. The Gemara continues. It says, "Keman Azla had Tanya." So who is the Braita? Who is this Braita going according to? Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel Omer, Gishamim she'ardu shiv'a yamim ze achar ze. If you have rain that falls 7 days in a row, okay? Ata moneh bahen revi'ah rishona u'shniya. Okay? Vishlishit. 1 second. Okay, the Gemara says, let's say 1 year you have it rain and it rains 7 days straight. She biflej. Rains 7 days in a row. The Gemara says, you count either the first and the second. Those are counted as the first and the second, or the second and the third, because you had it 7 days in a row. The Gemara says, who's that going according to? So remember, I already foreshadowed this earlier. Keman ki Rabbi Yossi has to be going according to Rabbi Yossi, that they're equidistant. The other two opinions, the first two that we read, right, were 3-7-17 and 7-17-23. That's not equidistant. The last one is 17-23 and Rosh Chodesh Kislev. Now, it's interesting to point out, as I told you, if you count them that way, actually, it doesn't really work. Because the month of Cheshvan is actually never less than 29 days. Which means it's 30. So from 23 to 30 is actually 8 days. So it doesn't mean 7 days, Shiki'ah, to the next night. It means 24-hour periods. So if it starts midway through the day, you get from one to the next and from the next to the next. Now, some of you are wondering, and really I think that was underlying your question earlier, Morris. Who the heck cares? I see that in your eyes. Who the heck cares? The first rain, the second rain. If it rains 7 days, you have the first one, you have the second one. Gemara actually is going to explain that there are halachic ramifications to this counting. Kiman ki Rabbi Yossi, Amar Rav Chizda, halacha ki Rabbi Yossi. Bishlem Aravia Rishona lishol. Someone's at the door again. Sorry, you want to grab the door? Someone's going to grab the door. Okay. Bishlem Aravia Rishona lishol shlishit shlehit anot. The Gemara says, hold up. The first one, and the second one, and the third one. The first one I get that we need to have a first one. Because when the rain season starts, that's when you ask. So it's relevant when the first one is to know when you start asking. The third one is relevant because if you've passed the third stage and you didn't get rain, now you know you need to fast. But why is it relevant that there should be a middle rain? And why is there a halachic ramification to the fact that there's a second rain? That the rabbis need to tell us, this is the day, this is the day. Just tell me the bookends and I don't care about the middle one. The Gemara answers, Lemai, Amar Rebbe Zera teaches, Linedarim. For the sake of Nidarim, when someone makes they promise, they make an oath. The Tanan, the Gemara says, the Mishnah says, Hanoder ad hagishamim, or Mishiyerdu gishamim. The guy says, I swear I'm not going to put on my raincoat until the gishamim, until the rains. Or Mishiyerdu agishamim, from the time that the rains have fallen. Okay? So when the person has made that, or they say, I swear I'm going to have no carbs until the rains, until the second rains. Now you have to realize that you and I, we would never speak like that. But back in the old country, that's how they talked. So if you go back to Halab, my own father did not know his own birthday. You go back to the OG people from Syria, many of them did not know the day they were born. Does any of you have was your father from there? Your father from there? No. Your grandparents. They did not know the day they were born. Why? Because the calendar, they didn't even know what year they were born. They were born in the year of the flood. They were born 2 years after the expulsion. Like that, they just counted. It wasn't the dates and the calendar year were not so important to them. They didn't have these, to us, there's tax day and this day, all these days that become very important. There's all these days off. When you work in the farm, there's no Memorial Day, weekend, Labor Day, New Year's. Every day you milk the cow. Every day you got to go check the chicken for eggs. There's no off days. Okay? In fact, there are halachot about how you're supposed to feed your animals on Shabbat. There's no off days. The animal's going to be hungry. It's going to go crazy. It's going to kick over, ruin the barn. So they would speak in that manner. They would say, I swear I'm not going to have any whiskey until, and they would use a point of reference. The rains was a very important thing in their society. So when a person says the rains, or once the rains have fallen, when does his neder expire? Until the second rain. Now, a simple understanding would be because he said rains, plural. First one is rain, second one is rains. The second actually approach in the commentaries is that when he says rains, he means rains that actually have an impact. That first rain is very gentle. It's the second rain that makes an impact on the roads. So people would be referencing the rains when the rains actually had made an impact on their daily life. Now, by the way, he says nidarim, but I was thinking to myself, what if you wrote a contract and you said, I'm going to pay someone back by a certain time? It's relevant for any time that you would use that as a marker. So the second rain. When is the second rain? 3 opinions. The 7th, according to Rabbi Meir. The 17th, according to Rabbi Yehuda. And the 23rd, according to Rabbi Yossi. Okay? So that's the first opinion. Rav Zvid used to teach lezetim, for the olives. What does that mean for the olives? The Tanan, the Mishnah says, let me just give you a little bit of background now. Today, all we have when it comes to tzedakah is, what tzedakah do you know about? Maaser. You have any other tzedakah you have to give? We're not aware. It's funny.
In Israel, if you have land, right?
Yeah, if you have peah.
Shemitah is not tzedakah.
No, if you the corpse. Yeah.
So, here we go. What'd you say? The crops.
The crops.
What about the crops is something else. Yeah, the crops. You leave the corner. What's that called?
Peah.
Peah. Okay, you see? Shikha. But these are all elements of tzedakah, within the realm of tzedakah. We don't have these variants of tzedakah. We have one, ma'aser, because our whole economies have shifted away. They have the first of the animal and the first of the thing. They're always giving and thinking about tzedakah. There was always tzedakah ramifications, which I think helped people become much more charitable people, because it was part of a much more prevalent and a daily lexicon. Whereas with us, it's like ma'aser. If you have your money in stocks or in real estate, when are you worrying about ma'aser?
12:31.
Once a year. That's a disaster for a person who's trying to develop a tzedakah conscious mindset.
Here.
Sorry?
Now if you live around here.
By the way, the phone rings, but then you give the guy from your ma'aser. So it's still the same pot, okay? So the Gemara says, leket is when a person would gather one or two sheaves and then they would fall on the ground. So if you drop a whole stack, you pick up what you dropped. You drop a little bit. The Torah is trying to teach you, leave it. Leave it for the poor person who's going to come to your field to collect it. I think the message as well of leket is a couple of pennies. Leave it for someone else. Don't be strict about a couple of... That's the idea of leket. The Gemara continues, says, b'shikha is when you were going through, you forgot some items behind. A certain amount is part of shikha. You don't go back and take the shikha. Rashi learns an unbelievable message from shikha. Ready for this one? Shikha, I forgot the item behind. Now the poor guy comes, he takes the item I forgot. Rashi says, what do we learn from here? You're walking down the street, $1 falls out of your pocket. A poor guy comes, picks up the $1 you dropped. Do you get reward for that tzedakah? Rashi says, yes. Where do we learn it from? From shikha. You forgot it. So when a person has good coming about through him as a proxy, even if that's not intended, you still get the reward of the tzedakah that happened because of you.
Didn't Yaakov forget something and he went back for it?
Yes, it's not by everything you forget. It's forgetting a certain amount of crops. Okay? Ubipe'ah, the corner of the field. So when is a person, now I've left it out there for them. Until when? Do I have to let it rot in the field? Let's say poor people came and they went through and they left it there. Am I allowed to take it now? Yes, the Gemara, the Mishnah says, at what stage am I allowed to go and take it? The Gemara says, Mishiyelchu aniyim bekerem v'yavo. Once the poor people come and they revisit. So after 2 visits from the poor people, fada. Go ahead, have it for yourself. The Gemara continues, Beprat, beperet ube'olelot. What's peret? Peret is the same. Peret is to grapes what leket is to wheat. So 1 or 2 items, ahlan. Peret is when there's 1 or 2 grapes, a small amount, and they got left on the item, leave them over there, okay? Olelot is when you have deformed grapes. So you leave the deformed, no one's going to buy it. I always thought to myself, it's very interesting. I got a gift this year from a company that, what do they specialize in? Deformed fruits. Why? Because there's an entire industry. You have all these fruits that they can't bring to the consumer. So you have an apple, it's not round, it's oval. You have a pear, it's not pear-shaped, it's heart-shaped. No one will buy it. So what do? They throw it out. Meanwhile, what a waste. And that obviously has trickle-down economics, if you believe in that. But there's trickle-down economics of the misshapen fruit. So they started selling and gift basking in a very beautiful gift basket, misshapen fruit, which I think is a nice idea. Okay? In Israel, what do? There's a company, a tzedakah called leket, and what do? They find all the misshapen fruits and they give them out to these poor people who have nothing to eat. And all of a sudden they get all the food that they need for the whole week, for the whole month. And what's the only deficiency? That it's the wrong shape. Okay? And they said, we don't need your money. Don't send us money. We don't need it. We've got the produce. They're throwing it in the garbage. All we need is money for people to gather it up and to bring it to the poor people's houses. Beautiful charity in the land of Israel. Isn't that fantastic? So I don't know in our world if olilot, which are deformed grapes, which are now marketable, what would constitute a deformed grape, a deformed cluster of grapes? But either way, beperet ubeolilot, mishiyelchu aniyim bekerem v'yavo. So there's 2 different stages. One is mishiyelchu hanimushot. The word nimushot is the square root, if you will, the root of the word is mamesh or mimashesh, which means to feel. When someone's touching something. So once the people who touch go through, then at that stage you could take it. Peret olilot mishielchu aniyim bekerem, when the poor people go through the vineyard, viavo, when they come back again. Bezetim, what was the whole braita for this last three learns? When in olives are you allowed to then take the product for yourself? Mishetere deriyashniya, from the second rain. Okay? So the Gemara's question was, why do I need to know when the second rain is? Yeah. First answer is, if someone references that rain in a neder. I gave another example. If they reference it as a point of reference when they're going to pay back a loan or when they're going to do something. Second answer, the Gemara, Rav Zvid explains, we need to know when the second rain is, because at that stage on a year of Shemitah, or in a time when you had to leave something over for the poor people, that's the stage for Zetim. Now the Gemara is going to ask, and this is an example, Morris, where the Gemara is going to revisit something which is not relevant to the original line of thought, but is still related to the tangent that we've gone on. My nemushot, what is this nemushot that we just said, that allows for a person to take leket shikha and pe'ah, even if they're wealthy, even if they're a landowner, but we know that the poor people already, so to speak, had their chance. Amar Rabbi Yochanan explains, Sabi de Azli Atigra, the old people walking on canes. Why are we singling out? Why are we ageist over here? We're talking about the old people and their canes?
Very unwoke.
Right? It's unwoke. It's ageist. What are we talking about? Gemara means, no, it's not telling you anything negative. It means if a person's walking with a cane, they're not walking at full speed. And when they're walking with a cane, when they're walking at half speed, what happens? They don't miss anything.
Right, they see everything.
So once those people have gone through, once those people have gone through, there's not going to be anything left. So all the poor people, they give up hope because the old guy with his cane went through. He went through it very carefully. I don't know if you ever did this, by the way. Do you guys remember Barney's used to have a sale? I love clothing, but you know what I love more than nice clothing? Clothing on sale. So you go to the Barney sample sale. You see a Jewish guy with 14 suits on his arm going down the thing like this. You know, there's no goods there. Because anything good, he got. You see he's holding a size 60 suit and a size 38 short. Had this picking up for his family, for his uncle, for his grandmother. Everyone he's buying. You see a waspy guy wearing a nice Ralph Lauren polo, with a cravat around his neck. After him, he's leaving everything. Because nothing is exactly his polo Ralph Lauren purple label self-worthy. Okay? So according, after that guy, you want to go. So when the Mishnah says Nemushot, first opinion is the old guy with the cane. Second opinion, Rish Lakish said, Lekuti bata lekuti. The gatherers after the gatherers. What does that mean, the gatherers after the gatherers? You see a father and son team. The father's walking ahead, the son's walking behind. He misses, he picks up everything. So a guy who's strategically gathering, you know that they're not missing anything. Anyone who sees father-son team, they say, forget this aisle. Clean up aisle 7, right? Chalas, aisle 7, nothing's gonna be there.
Two Jewish guys at Barney's, they're only going.
Chalas, forget the whole store's gone. Okay. 2 Jewish guys at the Barney's sample sale is why Barney's went bankrupt. Okay, fine. The Gemara continues. The Gemara says, Lekute bata lekute. One gatherer after another. Rav Papa says, now we're going back to the original point. We're not continuing on Nimushot. So following the linear line of going back and forth. If you could think through an entire session of Gemara, you're capable of following the court case of Kyle Rittenhouse. You're capable of convicting O.J. Simpson. You're capable of following even the most, energetic CPA, because your brain is following every line of reasoning all over the place. Rav Papa says, let's go back to where we were before. Why do we need the date of the second rain? To go in the permitted paths. What does this mean? The permitted paths. Our master taught, any person is allowed to use the permitted paths until a person has experienced the second rain. Okay? Now, let me just explain what that means. There's a machloket as to when this opinion started. But some say Yehoshua, some say Shlomo HaMelech. Let's say I have private property in the land of Israel, okay? I own lot 7-4b, okay? Now you're coming back from your fields. You need to walk all the way around my field to get home. Hassle. Private property, no trespassing. Said Shlomo HaMelech, said Yehoshua, different opinions when it started, you're allowed to walk through the guy's field even though it's private, just depending on the season. So it can't be in a time when it's going to cause him any damage. But in a time when it won't damage him, we say Jewish people have to allow one another a benefit when it doesn't cost them anything. What's that called? Zeh nehene, this one enjoys, v'zeh lo chaser, and this one did not lose out. So in a time when it's not going to hurt me, you can walk through my field without asking what a catch. I haven't had enough tequila. Without asking permission. Got it? So the Gemara says, when is that time? When it starts causing damage, when you can't walk through the guy's field. Answers the Gemara from the Riviyah, from the second time, from the second rain. In the first rain, the crops have not started the growth process at all. So the whole summer, no problem. Walk through the field, nothing's growing there. Because he hasn't planted, and he's already gathered at the end of the season. So summertime, nothing. Plants, nothing. You're walking on top of the ground that's already been planted. The rain starts to fall, the first rain, still no problem. Once the second rain starts, the rain has already rained, it's already growing roots. You step on the earth, you don't realize, but you're displacing with your weight the earth. You can literally rip the roots out from underneath the ground that you can't even see. So once the second rain has come, you can't take a shortcut. What date is that? Machloket 3 ways, 7th, 17th, or 23rd. That's why we need to know the second rain according to that opinion. So you ask a simple question. How many answers you get if you're living in the Gemara? Not a simple answer. At least 4 answers so far. 3 is the third answer. Let's go with the final answer. The final answer is Rabbi Nachman. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak. Okay, so we've been learning a lot from Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak up until this point. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak says, "Liva'er perot shiv'it." It's relevant to the time when a person is already allowed to get rid of the fruits of shiv'it. Why? Because after in the 7th year, when a person has already had the second rainfall come by, he knows it's not going to be used at that stage. He can dispose of the perot shiv'it. Okay? We're going to continue from this point, Be'ezrat Hashem, next week.